Because I was well behaved as a child, I was the one who was always farmed out to relations. They sent me to Maryborough in Victoria, and Uncle found out that I could draw. And he used to let me use his big study he had, because he was the local metallurgist as well as the chemistry teacher up there. And they lived opposite the park in Maryborough. It was lovely looking at the park of a morning, plenty of swans. And in those days, we used to get a lot of swaggies would pass, and you'd see these poor old fellows with big humps of either an old mattress or something on their back. But there was always plenty to see in the way of lost people. And I used to enjoy them. And we had the big main drain opposite where we lived. That was made by the convicts in the early days. And it was loaded with interesting history. And the atmosphere started me off for wanting to draw. It wasn't until I went to the little Maryborough Tech. There was a marvellous drawing master there, and his name was Tommy Pridgeon. And he was brilliant, and he spotted my talent, and he encouraged it. Nothing lasted long, pushed out for going somewhere else. But everywhere I went, I did take my drawings with me. The war came and everyone joined up, and I had to do something sensible. So the best thing to do was to take me away from art and everything. Put me to train at St Vincent's. I was very good as a trainee. I liked was one fellow, his name was Mr Buck. Mr Buck only had half his leg, the rest of it, God knows what had happened to it. And I said, "What happened to the rest of your leg, Mr Buck?" Because I was going to wash him. He said, "Oh, the boys blew it off." Nice, innocent kid. I was told to look after him. I used to entertain most of the people most of the time by telling them such terrific tales and things like that. They enjoyed my company. But when Christmas time came, I could put on great concerts for them. From Vienna, the great Sigmund Schuller. They were very lucky to get him in Australia. We had this concert, The Merchant of Venice, and I asked him would he like a part in my play, and he did. He said he would be delighted, with his real continental charm. I can always remember him. Took the part of Shylock in The Merchant of Venice. When it was finished, I came up down to the stage to take my bow. He said, "Your performance was rare." And coming from the great Professor Schuller, I thought that was wonderful. I got a position with a woman whose father spotted my talent, and I became a textile designer, and I rather liked it. Here again, though, the war was still on, but I couldn't continue with it. But I used to do a little bit of it in between. I grew to love animals because I knew they got a bad time. I was never very happy the way people kept their animals, and also seeing country people, how cruel they were at times. And then what I used to hate, the way possums and that were treated. And I campaigned against it. But I did stop a lot of the traffic in cockatoos from the market. But is it still going on in different places? These are the questions you ask yourself. The amount of money I spent on buying up birds in little cages, and then we'd go right out with them into beautiful areas where it was well wooded, and there'd be plenty of food for them, and we'd release out there. when I took on the various departments that handled them, I took on, the first one was the big wildlife crowd. There's a lot of cruelty that went on there. It still does go on. It'll be eventually all exposed, and I'm going to do it my way, by books and illustrations. While I was illustrating, I had to be careful. Wildlife and the way it's treated and handled with very kid gloves. And it went over very well and they sold very well. I couldn't make it too obvious because I didn't want to start fighting with the establishments, because to me, there's too much cruelty going on behind the scenes. It was for 2 years, little baby. Oh, he was gorgeous. And I loved him. And he was well behaved. When you pick them up and cuddle them, they're lovely. You feel more maternal to those little fellas. He grew into a big boy, and then we released him into the country where he would have plenty of room to roam around. There's been a terrible cruelty towards animals. How they respond to you. Some are so traumatised when they arrive, it takes a long time and careful nursing to bring them back to that trust that originally they may have had. We don't know much about their history. It's the way they're brought to you. It never runs absolutely smoothly, but you've got to make it as smoothly as you can. And their little feet, you see the soles of their little feet as you nurse them. And presence does something to you. It takes a lot out of you when you're fighting for a cause that's very limited regarding the results. But if people come and report anything to me, I get it investigated and do my best to see what I can do to straighten it out. My theory is, if you make it powerful and well done, and the fencing good, your housing good, and the people themselves are the right choice, that takes years, but it's working now.
Do you consider your home to be a sanctuary for animals or a second home for animals?
A second home.
Why do you think that?
I'd like to be able to have a bigger place in the country, and that's what I'm working for. And I've got my eye on where we have that property out of Yea. It's up there. And I put a lot of money into it. Not everybody has the extreme dedication that we have. You have it. I have it.
If people had to think of Ninon Phillips, what would you like people to remember you by?
Working for wildlife.